Delhi, and is approved by All India Council for Technical Education, Ministry of HRD, Government of India for Technical Programs, and Bar Council of India for Law Programs. GIBS is currently offering postgraduate programs which are MBA, MBA International Business, and undergraduate programs which are BBA LLB, BA LLB, and BBA. GIBS has been graded A by National Assessment and Accreditation Council in second cycle. It is an ISO 9001-2015 certified institute. GIBS has been rated A+ by State Fee Regulatory Committee, a fee committee of Government of NCT of Delhi, and rated highest grading A by Joint Inspection Committee of Government of NCT of Delhi and GGSIP University. GIBS has been rated A by Academic Audit of GGSIP University consecutively from past 8 years. Also, GIBS has been rated number 2 by Times Peace School Survey consecutively for last 3 years. Atmanirbhar Bharat, which translates to Self-Reliant India, is used by Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, and the Government of India in relation to the economic vision and development in the country. In this context, the term is used as an umbrella concept in relation to make India a bigger and more important part of the global economy, pursuing policies that are efficient, competitive, and resilient, and being self-sustaining and self-generating. India is seen as the youngest country to lead the world in the 21st century. In 2020, India has 65% of the working population in the age group of 15 to 59 years, which is among one of the largest pool of working population. Through this demographic dividend, India is expected to become skill capital of the world in next decade. The Impact Lecture Series is an attempt by Ministry of Education IIC to proliferate the cause of entrepreneurship. GIBS IIC is proud recipient of Impact Lecture mandate. In the same pursuance, this webinar is organized on the theme of Atmanirbhar Bharat, Skill India, and entrepreneurship opportunities in India. The major objectives of the webinar is to make students aware on the scheme of Atmanirbhar Bharat and suitably motivate them for participation, and also to create awareness on the opportunities for entrepreneurship in India. Our speaker for this session is Mr. Rohit Kumar, co-founder at White Canvases Bangalore. Sir has studied commerce, management, economics, taxation from University of Lucknow. He has done his MBA in Finance and Marketing from Symbiosis Center for Management and HRD. PGPBABI in Business Analytics and Business Intelligence from Great Lakes Institute of Management. Sir possesses in-depth knowledge in marketing research, data science, and customer insight. Sir has immense experience and has worked with great and several known names. He has served as Director, Consumer Insight at Nielsen, Director, Delivery Service at Optimal Strategics Group, Principal Consultant at Etima Consulting Group, Co-founder at 124 Square Feet, Head of Research at Cushman and Wakefield. Sir have worked as Senior Consultant at Bracket Consultings. Sir hold experience in startup advisory, business planning, and turnaround of loss-making small and medium enterprises. Mr. Kumar has also assisted media planning for various small and medium-sized organizations. He holds good pace of over business process mapping, and he has done secondary research for financially challenged companies for business development, financial product development, and risk analysis. We welcome you, sir, and we are glad to have you with us, and we are eager to hear from you and learn from you. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Pragati, for that very nice introduction. Can you just confirm one more time that you are able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Just allow me a second before I share my screen and see if you can see my screen along with the audio. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir. The screen is visible.
All right. Thank you very much, Pragati, once again. Thank you, Dr.
So much,
Sheetal. And I now launch on to this very interesting topic of venturing into entrepreneurship. Now, what Pragati has pointed out is, of course, my professional background. Thank you once again for giving me those kind of words. Very humbled and very happy to hear that. On the personal front, Like Prakriti said, I'm based in Bangalore, but just a bit about me before we launch into this series of a few slides that I have created out of a few of my experiences. So I'm from Lucknow, born brought up there, but I'm a Punjabi by nature, and I call myself professional nomad as such, because after my MBA, I started my career in Bombay in a very exciting uh, venture called Positra SEZ. And it was kind of the first time somebody had attempted that kind of a feat in India. And I was a part of a very small team over there, and got my hands dirty in business development and consulting over there. I worked in Bombay for about 8 to 9 years before Gurgaon called, and I spent another 8 to 9 years in Gurgaon. And for the last 3 to 4 years, I am here in Bangalore. And to all the students who are listening, if you get a chance to choose between these three towns, my personal favorite and my personal recommendation would obviously be Bangalore. Two things. One, of course, is the weather, and the other is the culture. Because I have deeply been exposed to the cultures of Bombay as well as Delhi NCR, and of course, the last 3 or 4 years, the culture of working professionals here in Bangalore. Bangalore and Bombay would be at par as far as the working culture is concerned. But from the topic that is going to be discussed today and by myself, Bangalore has that air of entrepreneurship. The Bangalore has that air of starting something new. It also enables people to come in contact with the right set of mindsets, right set of people who can, talk about doing something new or starting something new. So the environment here is so conducive for what we're going to discuss over here. Is what prompts me to encourage you to seriously think about this town whenever you get a chance. You would thank me later once you come here and enjoy the weather and enjoy the kind of the camaraderie and the bonhomie that you face over here with the people around, because you get to meet a lot of people of the same wavelength at the same time. On the personal front, I'm married. My wife is an artist. She is kind of a traveling artist. She's right now in Chandigarh, uh, handling one of the projects for one of the newly built house. She uses oil and canvas as a medium to express. I have two small children, 11-year-olds Vivan and 8-year-old Summer, both boys, and they are in school right now. My parents are back in Lucknow, and I have an elder brother. Now, that encapsulates very quickly in terms of both professional and personal. I'm just divulging everything upfront so that if any one of you has any question, feel free to raise your hand and just unmute yourself and ask any question that you have of me. We'll be happy to answer that. Now, what you see in front of you are a few bulbs, and bulbs have always represented new ideas, new ventures, and at the same time it also is emblematic of entrepreneurship, new starts, new ideas. So what I want to convey from this particular slide, and the very first of it, is that if you are trying to think about venturing into entrepreneurship, you must give yourself that shot. And throughout these few minutes that I will be accompanying you on this ride, I will always be encouraging you to take that bold step. Uh, I don't have that picture in front of me right now because it was as fresh as I think 24 to 48 hours from today. It was a hoarding that Netflix had planted. I don't know where exactly. I saw it, I think, on Instagram, or I saw it on Twitter yesterday or day before. And it was a very simple message with the N, which is the logo of Netflix on the left hand side. And on the middle of it, there was just one small copy which read, if you're thinking of a startup, if you're thinking of venturing out, go ahead and do it. Don't be afraid. We started off with just DVDs. All right. The message that I'm trying to land over here is that if Netflix started off with just giving out DVDs to people, and look where they have come today. They have set up a massive kind of an infrastructure, massive platform, which is allowing a lot of us to look at entertainment in a very different way, which is video on demand or entertainment on demand. All of us are from different walks of life. We will be uh, in various forms of life, in various walks of life in another couple of years from now. Who knows, you would be in Bangalore, who knows, you would be in uh, Bombay, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai, or even outside India for that matter. So wherever you are, if you are thinking of watching a movie, the first thing that comes to your mind are, of course, Netflix, Prime Video, Z5, and all those names. So the point is that they have brought entertainment to a place which was completely unthinkable 20 years ago, 15 years ago for that matter. And it enables you to think that if they can do it, it's a fair bit of chance that you probably will have, especially the fact that you're in your 20s, you should go out and experiment and take the risk. All right. Now, I want to start off with try to just wrap our heads around what exactly is entrepreneurship. How would you like to define it? The basic definition, of course, is to create a new enterprise, something new. All right. On the right hand side of your screen, you have the cover of a book by none other than Peter Thiel. The book is Zero to One. I had the pleasure of reading it, and I would strongly recommend every one of you to go ahead and pick it up. It's not a very long read. It could probably be done and dusted in 2 to 3 days maximum. It's not a very thick book. But what it tells you is for any venture, if you have to think about something new, you're going from 0 to 1. Now, the whole concept about what 0 to 1 is, 0 means nothing. So nothing is existing as of now. All right. Uh, if you could just think about Uber as an example, and I will throw in these examples during these few slides that I have, and they will repeat over and over again because you will the conversation will be around certain topic. It will be centered around certain thought. So Uber can be used over and over again for any kind of example. So Uber is a classic example of 0 to 1. When Travis was trying to figure out who's the co-founder or the founder of Uber, he was trying to grapple with this idea of how exactly he can hail a ride sitting at home without moving from his chair. He struck up with this idea of planting a GPS device in a taxi, uh, using Google Maps API on his algorithm, and then linking everything of that infrastructure, which is a phone number of the rider, the phone number of the driver, and the GPS device and the maps. And lo and behold, you have a working business model in front of you, which was not existing even 10 to 12 years back. Now, the fact that 0 to 1 is something which is at the core of an enterprise or the core of an entrepreneur, which is if you're thinking of something which is not existing as of now, so you have invented something, that is 0 to 1. Now, 1 to 10 is the journey that we'll talk about in terms of how exactly you go out scaling your business from, let's say, the first customer that you have or the first million that you made to the 10th customer or the 10th million that you want to make. All right. So that's a completely different uh, a thought altogether. That's a completely different journey altogether, which will also mean that you have started off on a very strong footing because you have created something from 0 to 1, and people are taking notice of it, especially funds, especially investors who would want to be a part of it, and they see a clear scaling up of business, and you would be hearing 5x, 10x, 50x of investment. This is nothing but if I'm investing, let's say $100 into your business, can I be able to, or would I be able to make 500 out of it in, let's say, 12 to 24 months of time? Any investor that you get, if you have a kind of a venture in mind, they will always enter with an exit in mind, and exit is nothing but how they can get back the money that they have invested in. All right. So creation of a new enterprise or a new opportunity is something which an entrepreneur does. Now, new doesn't mean, and 0 to 1 doesn't mean that it has to be completely new. Now, if you go back to the previous slide that I started off with, if you look at the bulb is a humble device which gives out light, which enables you to read and work in the darkness. Invented by Thomas Edison after thousands of attempts, and it is used as an example of invention. Yet there are inventions in this particular category itself that are uh, helping a lot of people solve a lot of problems, especially energy problem. So I'm talking of LED bulbs, I'm talking of different kinds of energy saving lighting devices. So even if there is something already there in place, it doesn't stop you from thinking of how you can improve on top of that, how you can go about improving the product, and how it can probably save some bit of energy or some bit of cost or anything which is in the realm of efficiency. That again is also an innovation. That again is also a part of being an entrepreneur. All right. So if you have an idea which is not new at all, it should not stop you from going ahead and investing your energy and your resources into trying to see if it can convert itself into a viable business. And by viable business, I mean it should be making money for you. If not, then there is no point in doing that kind of a business. All right. So new 0 to 1, new enterprise, new opportunity can all be clubbed together into the fact that it's a viable business option. All right. So for example, if I go back again to Uber, so Uber has already been invented. It is already there in place. But there is a small country, let's say in South America or in South Africa, where it is not existing. So someone designed something over there, and you have it. So it's a kind of a 0 to 1 opportunity again. Ola did it here in India even before Uber came into place. So it's something which you can use as an example of what 0 to 1 is. I'll also talk about Flipkart as an example because the founders, the co-founders, Sachin Bansal, Vinny Bansal, both Bangalore people, they were early working with Amazon in the US after their graduation, and they came back to India and they created something of that very nature. So even cloning or doing something of the same thing that you have knowledge of in a different market is also new enterprise, is a new opportunity. All right. Now, what is actually at the core of entrepreneurship? All right. Now, the core of entrepreneurship is a very small 4-letter word called risk. Now, it could be low, it could be medium, it could be high, and that defines in terms of what exactly are the kind of lives you can live and the lifestyle that you can enjoy once you are prepared and ready to take that risk. All right. But it doesn't necessarily mean that higher risk will translate to higher reward or lower risk will translate to lower reward. That proportional relationship between risk and reward will always be there. And you have to be very, very cognizant of the fact that without a risk of doing something which is in classical economic terms used to be called opportunity cost, you will not be able to move ahead with it. So if you're in your 20s and if you're right now pursuing your MBA and you have an idea and you want to pursue it, you have the resources, the opportunity cost, of course, of the risk for you would be that you will lose a bit of time, let's say maybe 12 months or 24 months of trying out that idea. All right. It could also mean that you could have spent that time of 12 to 24 months in a corporate and learn something over there, and then you could have come back to your venture. All right. So risk will always be there. For me right now, when I'm doing this venture of mine, the risk is scaling up. The risk is growth. The risk is, of course, the EMIs that I have to pay, whether I'll be able to make enough kind of money that will sustain my household and my dreams of taking my venture to the next level. Right. So the whole the core of entrepreneurship is, if I can encapsulate it, is risk. Now I'm sure that you would have access to a lot of different reading material. There are thousands of articles and news sites that you can read and books you can pick up, and you can also go ahead and have personal stories from different entrepreneurs who have done it. And I feel like what you get from a lot of this is what I consider wisdom. All right. Sometimes what happens is people will tell you only the good part of their story, but you have to also scratch at the surface and figure out what it was like at the beginning itself. All right. So the and I come back to the very 4 words that are right there in front of you, which is risk. So whenever you're talking to an entrepreneur, whenever you're talking to someone who has done it, uh, I would suggest that you go back to this particular word called risk and ask him or her, how was it when you started off? All right. There are countless number of stories of uh, uh, glamorous co-founders being flashed on the front pages of magazines and newspapers. There are billion-dollar companies. They're called unicorns. How they managed to go up there, but no one talks about what happened in the very first few days of setting up that business. No one talks about the late nights that they spent writing the code or preparing on the product, and foregoing a lot of social activities, foregoing a lot of parent-teacher meetings for their children, foregoing a lot of different things that they could have done for themselves. So that kind of a trade-off no one talks about, and I would encourage you to definitely talk about that particular thing, because that will give you a whole rounded perspective of what an entrepreneur is, what they do and how they do it, and what are the risks and what are the different things that are involved. You of course know the glamorous side of it, which is maybe $100 million valuation or $1 billion valuation, or you raised Series C or Series D kind of funding from the marquee investors like Tiger or Sequoia. But no one talks about all these small things like when you started, how much money did you have in your bank? Or no one talks about did you have enough money or enough runway to last you till such time that you started making money for yourself. I'll talk about that as well. And I'll also tell you about in terms of two of my innings as entrepreneur. One was a failure, one is right now, which appears to be a budding success. And you can get a fair sense in terms of how exactly the thought process works. All right. So do keep in mind this word risk when you are thinking about uh, what exactly goes behind these kind of ventures. Of course, would love to talk about some inspiring stories. You have, of course, in front of you these three stalwarts of Indian startup system. On your left, you have the Flipkart co-founders of Sachin Bansal and Binny Bansal. They, of course, were the first people who had taken the risk of creating something out of thin air, out of, like I said, from the experience of working with Amazon earlier in the US. And then they came back to India. Now they have sold their entire uh, for their stake to Walmart. Sachin Bansal is right now setting up a new company called Navi General Insurance, operating out of Bangalore. And Viri Bansal is still back in Flipkart and just seeing the operations of the day. Now they are a classic startup story in terms of building something on your own, because you knew how exactly it can change the lives of a lot of people in India, both for the consumers as well as the sellers. And they saw it firsthand when they worked with Amazon earlier, and how impactful the idea was. So they could replicate the entire thing back here in India. The second venture that I want to talk about, and I've been associated with this particular thought, which is electric vehicles, back from 2007, 2008, when I did my first project for Mahindra and Mahindra, and they were in collaboration with Navistar, which was again an international company, and they wanted to release electric buses for different places like zoological parks. So in Delhi, you have the zoo. In Bangalore also, you have a massive zoological park, which requires people to walk great distances. And at that time, Mahindra was trying to figure out if they could create something which could enable people not to walk so much in those kind of places, religious places, which were far massive in nature and big in nature. And they were not able to do it because the idea was a little too early in its inception stage. That was also the time when I also came to know about a person called Shai Agassi in the US, an Israeli, who was trying to do what Elon Musk is doing now with Tesla. At that time in 2007, 2008, he got pummeled, he got pushed because of the oil lobby from OPEC, and the US, of course, had its own interest. So that idea got nipped in the bud, and he was not able to do what Elon Musk is doing with Tesla right now. Now, Ather Energy is the next phase of automotive in India, and Swapnil Jain and Tarun Mehta, again Bangalore boys, they are doing extensive work in bringing electric scooters, electric two-wheelers to the Indian fraternity. The idea is that by 2030 we should be off diesel, we should be off petrol, and we should be relying more on electric vehicles so that our reliance on the Middle East goes down, and we have those very small, very light kind of mobility solutions which are running on electricity. So more power to them. I should also mention Ola also. Ola has just very recently launched its own electric vehicle very recently, and they will be in direct competition with Ather. So watch this space. This is going to explode in the near future because government will mandate phasing out of fossil fuel powered vehicles such as four-wheelers, cars, and motorcycles, and of course commercial vehicles. And this will be the day and age when there will be a day and age when every vehicle will be electric based. Then, of course, we have Paytm, Vijay Shekhar Sharma, our Delhi representative. He started off Paytm a long time back, but his uh, his glory days came around the time when demonetization happened and people were forced to use uh, um QR codes. They were forced to use paying money online, and he's made $1 billion company out of that. Happy to say that Paytm is one of our clients, and they are happy with our work that we do for them. And they don't need any kind of an introduction like Ethan needed. So I will leave it at that. So these are some inspiring stories, but don't want to give you all a rosy picture and all a goody kind of a feel in terms of what entrepreneurship is all about. There are not so inspiring stories as well. ZPay, for example, I don't know whether you've heard of this kind of a company before. I invested few of my money in cryptocurrency when it was I don't even recall what price I entered because the variations happen so drastically. They are so erratic in nature. So ZPay was a platform where you could invest even let's say 1,000 to 5,000 rupees of your spare money on cryptocurrency, and they had to wind up operations because the policies are not in place. So what you think is the future, which is cryptocurrency, what you think is going to be a product or a service which will replace currency like dollar or an Indian rupee, uh, you're far ahead of your time. And I myself made that mistake, and I'll talk more about that in detail. So ZPay was far ahead of its time, and they had to wind up operations because government mandated, the RBI mandated that cryptocurrencies are not legal in India, and I lost a lot of money in there. So I don't want to talk about that. It's something which is really not very pleasant topic. Then, of course, you have Tiny Owl. It is in the realm of Zomato and Swiggy. Tiny Owl started off in Bombay, and it was a hyper local kind of a delivery app which helped people order from the most nearest restaurant. Their uh, their soft story was that they grew too fast, they grew too soon, and they were not able to sustain that kind of a growth, despite the fact that they got funding, despite the fact that they had hired a lot of people, and despite the fact that they had onboarded over 4,000 restaurants across India. So any kind of an idea which is viable, any kind of an idea which gets funding, any kind of an idea which gets customers as well, does not ensure that you go ahead and you make money, does not ensure that you are successful. Uh, a lot of softer skills, and I'll talk about that in just one single slide at the end of it, because that's something which I want to leave it at the end. A lot of softer skills and softer points also ensure whether you proceed to the next level or not. I don't want to talk about luck over here because luck may or may not sometimes play a major part in your play. If you have an idea and if you have the wherewithal go ahead and implement it. Chances are that you will be successful. All right. And I'll talk about those softer things and softer skills in one slide at the little end of it. All right. So coming back to you as MBA candidates right now, coming back to you as the future of India, we do not expect you to go ahead and change everything, but we do expect you to be the leaders of tomorrow. And we do also expect from you that you will not only be employing yourself gainfully, you will be also giving employment to other people as well. All right. Now, that means that you have to start seriously thinking about what you need to do in your life now, because you are, I don't know, you're in the first year, the second year of your MBA, doesn't make a difference, 1 or 2 odd years. But you are at a juncture where you are poised to take the first step into your corporate life. You're poised to take the first steps into your financial independence. Let me not call it corporate life. You're going to take your first steps to be financially independent. And it's a great feeling to have, because you don't have to call up your father or your mother, say, hey, I need money for the rent that I have to pay for my hostel, or I have to pay money for my books or anything. It's a great feeling. All right. Now, if you're able to provide that feeling to a lot of other people by employing such workforce, that is one feeling above than being financially independent yourself. All right. Now, the rule of thumb that I have read somewhere is that if you're good at something, do it for the pay slash salary. However, if you're great at something, then do it for the invoice. Now, that means that if you're good at something, you go for someone else. But if you're great at something, start your own business. All right. Now, it all depends upon you, what you're good at and what is your strength and what is your unfair advantage. All right. That is something which will come only when you do a lot of self introspection in terms of where exactly your strengths lie. All right. Now, I want to start off with my very first inning, and I want to share my story in terms of how exactly I went about taking care of the very first venture that I had founded back in 2016. Now, what was my unfair advantage at that time? I was working with Cushman and Wakefield. It is an international property consultancy. So I don't know what your knowledge of international property consultancies are. I don't know whether, and also I don't know whether you heard the names of Cushman and Wakefield, JLL, CBRE, Knight Frank, Colliers. These are consultancies that help corporates with their real estate needs. All right. So tomorrow, if you are big enough and you have, let's say, 10,000 employees, you're looking for an office to have them come and work together. You would obviously go to a Cushman Wakefield or a JLL or a CBRE and tell them, hey, this is the workforce that I have in mind. This is the kind of specs that I'm looking at, and please help me find my address for my office. So that's something which they do. IPCs also help once you have found the address. They do the fit outs. They'll put the desk, they'll put the chair, they'll put the heating and ventilation. They'll do the entire interiors beautifully so that you're able to enter and work as productive as you can. All right. They also help you with respect to funding as well. Sometimes if you're looking at funds for your real estate needs. So that's the kind of a place where I was working earlier. They also have another function called facilities management. Now think of when you enter a mall, the first thing that greets you is a scanner in place, maybe a metal detector. There is a guard with a metal detector in hand. Now and the moment you enter, you smell the beautiful smell of the nice smell of the mall inside. Now all that is not done by the shops that are there inside. No, this absolutely not done by the establishment inside. There is an entity called the facilities management entity, which takes care of each and every single thing that helps you run a mall smoothly. All right. Now, I was one day having breakfast with the head of facilities management at Cushman Wakefield one day, and he informed me that there are certain pitches that they're making with one of the real estate guys, which was DLF to name him, and they were looking at one firm which could help them solve some problem with respect to parking. Now, Remember, parking is something car and parking by means is in corporate. So there's a building, let's say a 1 million square feet building, which will have at least 25 to 30 floors, and it will have 3 to 4 basements. Now the basement will have parking inside, and maybe it will have parking in the or ground floor level as well. Now the problem that DLF was facing was that they were not able to figure out how to allocate in a more elegant way the parking slots, and they were also not able to figure out how the users or the corporates who are coming in every day with their knowledge of how many parking slots are available. And that was something which I was feeling myself as a problem, because when I used to go every morning in the office, I used to drive down when I was in Gurgaon. Now, the moment I used to enter the basement, it was my parking was in the third basement level, and we had fixed 15 parking slots. One was reserved for the CEO. The remaining 14 were up for grab on a first come first serve basis. Now there were 25 to 30 odd of us who used to come by car every day, and the first 14 people used to get parking, and the remaining 10 to 15 people had to go back all the way up to the ground floor and pay for the parking, and then go back up. Now that pain was there of early in the morning of driving down to the basement and then figuring out whether you have parking or not, going up back again disappointed, burning fuel, wasting precious 5 minutes of your time, which are the most productive in your day earlier. So that was a pain point that we were trying to solve, and that gave me the idea of having a kind of a small app which can tell you using, of course, IoT or RFID devices to tell you how exactly is the situation at the basement 3 level. So if you're starting from home and if you open the app and say, and it shows that there are 3 parking slots available, you can be sure that by the time you reach, those 3 parking slots will be over. So you might want to take an Uber or an Ola, or you stay home and call your boss and say, boss, I'm working from home today because I'm not going to get parking. All right. So that was something which was the knowledge of the weak spot that I had at that particular point in time. And I got in partnership with an old friend who was ex-IBM, ex-Wipro, a ninja at coding, and he could do the whole backend. And I explained to him exactly how the front end would look like. I explained to him how the whole concept would work, and we worked on it, and it was a great working model. And we did a concept of a proof of concept for our own company, and it went off quite well. All right. The other unfair advantage that I have was that I was at the right place, but not so right time. All right. And it told me that this, and I want to go back to ZPay, because this was thought of in 2014, implemented in 2015. And by the time it came, it was 2016, I was ready to launch it. So it took me around at least 2 years of brainstorming, working on uh, uh, different ways of solving the whole problem. Out of those 5 or 6 different ways of solving the problem, you arrive at the one most elegant and simplest one, so that both from the implementation point and both from the user point, which is the user experience, you should be at the sweet spot, so that you're not spending too much, yet you're solving the problem. Now, what we discovered was that a lot of people that we talked to, they did not find this as a painful enough problem to solve. So that's what the reason I'm saying that we were at the right place, which was in the real estate industry, and yet we were slightly ahead of our time, because now when I look at the people who were our competition, they are at least 5 years from 2016 when we had set up. They had also set up in 2016. They have managed to go ahead and get cash positive now. They have got few fundings as well. They have got few clients as well. Now, and I'll talk about why I had to stop somewhere in the middle of this, because very simple answer is the runway. The runway was not enough for me to sustain myself as far as uh, going ahead with that venture. And that venture was the very first venture for myself, and I owed it to myself in terms of whether to go ahead with it or not. Now remember, 5 years back, I was touching 40, and yet I was enthusiastic enough to go ahead and tell myself that when I'm 70, when I'm 80, and I look back and I have this thought that I had an idea, that I had a viable idea, which was a kick-ass kind of an idea. It was useful for the people, and I didn't try it. If I have that feeling when I'm 70, it will be kind of a regret. Now, the pain of regret, and please listen to this carefully, because this I have realized after 3 to 4 years of working on an idea and not succeeding. But I want to leave you with a message which you should probably wrap your head around very, very strongly. And the message is that the pain of regret that you feel of not doing something is far greater than the pain of failure. All right. So you have to be very comfortable with failure when you're starting off as an entrepreneur. So you have to be ready for any ups and downs that you might face when you're setting up your own business. But do remember that once you succeed or once you fail, you always learn. All right. And when you're 70 and you're talking to your grandkids, you will have stories to tell, and you can go to sleep peacefully feeling that you tried. It's okay to fail. All right. That's the message that I want to leave with you, that the pain of regret will be far greater than the pain of failure. All right. Failure will always teach you. Regret will always leave you with the fact that had I tried something of that nature, I could have succeeded. So do not wait for that age to come and then regret to come and fill you up. You owe to yourself that if you have an idea, just go out and try it, because in your 20s, that is the time when you have to take the maximum amount of risk. At max, what will happen? You will fail. At max, what will happen? You will fall behind at least a couple of years. But the race is long, dear friends. You have at least 30 to 40 years, maybe 50 years of a runway in front of you. Now is the time when you have to go ahead and pick up any product, any idea, any service that you have in mind, and go out and try it out yourself. All right. And finally, did the unfair advantage help me? Obviously not. I had access to the senior most industry leaders in real estate. I had access to the right ears, the right decision makers, yet this whole idea did not succeed because of various reasons. I don't want to talk about that anymore. I would love to talk about my second inning, which is I am in right now. Again, the whole template is the same. My unfair advantage, I'm from the same industry and have knowledge of the weak spots. Now, you will say, what is the same industry anymore now? So I have the unfair advantage of working in two industries in the last 20 years. One is real estate and one is marketing research. So real estate we have already talked about, where I had worked upon a parking solution. Clients loved it, but they could not buy it for any reason. The second industry that I want to talk about, in which I am in right now, is the marketing research industry. Uh, there I have been in the last 15 years. I started off in 2005. I started off with B2B research. I did a lot of household and consumer research. I did panel work, household panel work. I worked with some of the biggest name in the industry like Nokia, Pepsi, Nestle, to name a few, Samsung. Uh, and I got to know from them in terms of what the marketing problems are and how we can solve it using marketing research. I have seen this industry over the past, I would say, 15 odd years, and it has gone through at least two different shifts. The very first shift was from data acquisition, which used to happen using a pen and a paper kind of a questionnaire. So the basic or the currency of a marketing research industry is data. And how do you get data is through surveys. And how do you get surveys filled? You have a questionnaire which you give to your field people. They print it. It could normally be a 15, 20 odd pager. So A4 size 15 odd pages. So they go to the respondents, they go to the consumers, they fill out. Now I've seen this industry move from that paper and pencil data acquisition sphere to handheld devices like tablets, LED enabled data acquisition. It was a very painful move because investing into tablets, which are costing way upwards of 10 to 15,000 when they initially started. Now we have at least a tablet coming for as low as 5 to 6,000 rupees and can go for a good life for 1 to 2 odd years. So the cost has come down, the acceptance has come down, but when it started and when that shift happened, the industry leaders were, of course, the company that where I used to work, which is Nielsen and Kantar or IMRB International. Those were the companies that took the lead and said, "Hey, we'll move away from paper and pen to handheld devices like tablet." The second shift that I'm witnessing now, and which is at the very threshold of this third decade of this century, we are in 2021 right now, and which is artificial intelligence led data acquisition. And I'm very proud to say that White Canvases is again offering services in that domain, which even my bigger companies that I worked with earlier are not offering as of now. We have a few happy clients to begin with, and that is the kind of a space that we are working in. And this was the knowledge that I had at the beginning of my journey last year when I started and founded and co-founded White Canvases with three of my ex-colleagues from Nielsen. All three of us are from the same industry. All three of us know the weak spots of the Nielsens and the Kantars and the Ipsos and the GfKs. And we are using that knowledge to our own advantage, which is giving us the unfair advantage of uh, pitching to the same set of clients and offering far better and more robust database services at one third of cost. Now it's a win-win for at least us as well as the clients. It may not be the win for our ex company, but so is life. So that is the unfair advantage that we have. Happy to say that I am at the right place at the right time right now. Like I said, this industry, which is the marketing research industry, is seeing a shift from handheld devices, tablet enabled data acquisition to artificial based research, enabling us to get data through observation. So that's something which you may not be able to grapple right now because you have to be in the industry to understand. And if I can give you an example, like I initially said, so you would have participated in a lot of surveys. All right. So you bought a mobile phone. So a company which is selling mobile phone, let's say a Nokia or a Samsung, would obviously want to know how satisfied you are with your phone. It's a 10-minute survey that they will send to you. Earlier, it used to happen that someone would knock at your door. You would open, they would greet, and they would introduce themselves, and then they would proceed to take your feedback in terms of how you are satisfied with your phone or not. Now, in the past 5 to 6 odd years, this was being done online, where a link used to be prepared and it used to be sent to your phone through, let's say, a text or a WhatsApp message or through an email. And you used to click on that link, maybe a Google form opens up and you answer all those questions. Now what we're trying to do is we are asking these questions with the respondent sitting at their home. The camera of their laptop is on and we are asking them questions and they are answering, and we are reading their facial expressions, how they're changing. And we're trying to figure out what they're saying is in sync with their facial expressions or not. All right, that gives you a sense in terms of what exactly I'm talking about. And this is all artificial intelligence led, neural network led algorithms, which capture even the slightest twitch of your lips, even the slightest crinkle of your nose, even the slightest moving of your eyebrows up or down. And this algorithm notes at the base level what your base emotion is. So this emotion analytics gives you a leg up on a Nielsen or a Kantar when you're acquiring data using artificial intelligence through observation. Now, observation led is in our industry is what we call the unstated responses. Unstated responses are far purer in terms of reliance. So if I'm saying, yes, I'm happy with my phone, but my face is giving away that I'm not really happy. So the algorithm is designed to take into account what your facial expression is saying and base your decision on that particular expression. So that is the kind of a field that we are in right now, and that is an unfair advantage for us because in India, hardly anyone is offering that kind of a service right now. All right. The same thing, even the fact that I have failed once, and if I'm confident of the fact that this particular solution will work, then again, I owe it to myself as a professional, as an entrepreneur, to go out and see if I can convince people to try my services and to see if I can convince my clients to buy my services. And very happy to report that we have a few set of clients. The trickle has started, and we hope that this becomes a little more robust in nature. And today, very happy to say, is my unfair advantage helping me? Yes, it is helping me. Now, the whole conversation with Dr. Sheetal started with telling me that we have to give a sense to you guys in terms of what types of business you could think about. There are thousands of business that you can think about, and I want to just encapsulate those few really important ones that you can think about in the context of India, and how it can be useful for you to think in these buckets. But again, I would not encourage you to just think about yourself in these 6 buckets that I have in front of you. So an enterprise, and another disclaimer is the enterprise that I'm talking about is what or the nature of the business, not the legal entity that you could think about. I'm not talking of private limited company. I'm not talking about limited liability partnership. I'm not talking about something which has to do with getting a GST. Of course, you're most welcome to give me a call and ask me how you go about doing all that, because I've done that a couple of times and I can guide you in terms of how to go about setting up a venture. And want to tie this up with the fact that this entire Atmanirbhar initiative by the current government is to enable people like you, is to enable young blood like you to go ahead and set up your business in as less a time, at as less a cost, so that that worry is set aside. You just focus on your product, you focus on your service, you focus on your growth, and you focus on how you can deliver your services to your clients. There are professionals, CAs, who can take care of giving you your entity a legal status. So I'm not going to talk about that legal status and by the term enterprise that I mean over here. So the very first that comes to your mind, of course, is those entities that are backed by funds. Then secondly are those small businesses that you can think about, which are local in nature. The third is, of course, social venture. If you have a social service bent of mind, there are enough ways that you could think about how you can have a viable business model which is social in nature, yet it makes money. Then, of course, there is a corporate backed entity or something which you can think about when you miss the bus of entrepreneurship, yet you want to be financially independent. So you go ahead and start working for a corporate entity. So let's say, for example, Google is the best example I could think about. And one of the features or the one of the beauties of working at Google, apart from, of course, the perks that they offer, the money that they offer. But the beauty of Google and working over there is the fact that they allow you a fixed amount of time in, let's say, a day or in a week, where you can work on your own venture. All right. It'll be and they will allow you those the access to their own executives, investors, their own infrastructure to try out various different things. So if I were to talk about my previous venture, which failed, which was in the real estate domain, it could probably fall in the corporate backed venture, where the CEO of Cushman gave his blessing and said, Rohit, go ahead and try this. Although this was not a part of my day job, but this was something which I strongly felt about. And I also had the blessings of the head of facilities management. So he loosened his purse strings for me, and he gave me a bit of funds to play around with the hardware, hiring of interns, working on the proof of concept. So that is something which is a corporate backed venture. So that's something, if you are not ready to do something of your own right now, yet once you enter a corporate, be it an ICICI, be it an HDFC or insurance company or an automotive company, any company that you go to, guys, think of yourself as an entrepreneur. Please move away from the fact that you are an employee. You have to come and work from 9 to 6, maybe even more. You go there with a clear bent of mind that you will try something of your own there itself, but that can only come once you are in the industry and you have the knowledge. Like in my previous venture, I was there in the industry for a minimum of 4 to 5 years. I had established good amount of relationships through conversations, came to know more about the pain points, and one day the idea struck. So you never know when the idea can strike you. It could be through your own pain that you're feeling using that company's product, and you could think about new solutions. So please open your mind towards entrepreneurship. Open your mind not only from the fact that it's going to be your own venture, it could be under the umbrella of a corporate body itself. All right. So do think about how you can solve problems. So solving problem is at the base of entrepreneurship, along with the fact that you have to take risk. The fifth is, of course, lifestyle. It all depends upon you, how how you want to look at earning money yourself, and that is something which is going to be completely individual led decision. And I'll talk more about that, and I can give you examples of people who have done it around the lifestyle that they want to lead, and how they can structure their business around the lifestyle that they wish to lead. And lastly, it could be through acquisition. This enterprise could be through acquisition. A very simple example that I can think about is Swiggy and Dunzo. Dunzo is a hyper local delivery kind of a player, and it solved the problem of delivering anything and everything in a fair set of in a defined set of radius. So I have one piece of paper delivered to me through Dunzo. I have a pot of biryani made by my friend delivered through Dunzo. Let's say, for example, this friend of ours stays 60 kilometers away from where we live. She cannot travel here, we cannot travel there, but she has hired Dunzo to deliver the job. Now, Swiggy saw an opportunity over there, and this is as recent as 1 month old news that Swiggy is in talks of acquiring Dunzo, and you may probably hear about this in the coming months. And I'm now going to go a little deeper into each one of them and outline in terms of where exactly each one of them might fit into your scheme of things. And very quickly, let's talk about the funds-backed enterprise. They're largely characterized by being very small at the birth, but designed to become very large very quickly. Think of Uber, think of Facebook, think of Paytm Cred, Paytm, Twitter, Flipkart. Now, these are the kind of companies which were very small at the birth itself. Uh, Twitter started off, if I'm not wrong, somewhere in 2006, 2007, maybe even later. And I was surprised to see that Twitter even thought about this particular idea, because if you go back 2 years from when Twitter was found, Facebook already had that one simple text box, and it still has that at the top, what you're thinking about. All right. And you could write tons and tons of pages of what you're thinking about. And Twitter's picked up that idea from there and said that this is going to be a micro blogging site. I will allow you to restrict the number of characters to 140 only to begin with. It is now 280, I believe. And an idea was born, right? The whole the concept, once it has attained a decent amount of traction, the whole concept appears to be so simple, and then you kick yourself, hey, why didn't I think of that earlier? All right. So that is the beauty of these kind of ventures, and the investors are very quick to figure out how exactly these would fall in their scheme of things, and they quickly grab these kind of opportunities, and they enable themselves to go ahead and invest in these kind of ventures, because they know for sure that the growth will be exponential. These kind of enterprises are ideal for those who are in their 20s because there is absolutely no life beyond work. All right. And of course, the fact remains that you are still single. Maybe you have married, you don't have children, you don't have financial commitments, you still haven't bought your house, you still haven't bought your car, you still haven't invested in any kind of a financial commitment which makes you pay something on a regular basis. So this is the right time to go ahead and uh, tinker and play with any idea that you have right now, right? Do look around yourself. Maybe you'll find a friend who can help you scale up or write the code for an idea that you have. All right. And believe me, if you have the idea and if you have the right set of codes in place, everything will fall in place. You will get your first client, you will get your first customer, and investors will follow. And then you will follow this steep rise curve that you see in front of you. All right. That's the first type of enterprise that you could talk about. The second type is, of course, small business. Now, these are the small businesses are largely characterized by a stable and a manageable kind of an operation with lesser stress on growth. Now, you could think about, let's say, a pharmacy or a neighborhood mom and pop store, or maybe even a carpenter for that matter. Or if you think you are a fantastic cook, you could be a chef. uh, Go ahead and take a 2,000 to 4,000 square feet restaurant for rent and go ahead and see if you can just set up a new restaurant for yourself. So these are the kind of a small businesses that you can think about. There is absolutely no ideal age for this kind of an enterprise. Of course, there will be long hours because you may be the only worker over here. You may be having the help of your spouse. Maybe you have few other people working under you, but do expect to spend a lot of hours spending on that activity, which will be your own baby. The fact remains that there will be no scale up plan for this because a restaurant is a restaurant. At best, you can have another outlet or maybe another outlet, but you will have to think about how you could standardize a few processes. Maybe you can think about a cloud kitchen or maybe a centralized kitchen, or you can think about any other way how you can partner with someone who has the wherewithal to go ahead and partner with you and scale slightly up from what you are right now. The difference between the previous one and this one is that you are restricted in growth, right? Uh, of course, there are no exit plans as such. The founders, it's the founder's wish if they want to exit, it's the founder's wish if they want to continue with this business. The third type of enterprise is social, and they're largely characterized by doing good for the society, but with a profit motive. I've already talked about Tesla. I've talked about Aether Energy. There are tons and tons of other examples of different NGOs also. I don't want to call them NGOs because NGOs have the not-for-profit tag attached to it. But Suzlon is a good example. It's into wind turbine or wind power energy, which solves that problem of not depending upon the grid, the national grid for electricity. Aether is also a good example of not depending on the fossil fuel to power your car or your bike. It also is the fact that it's social in nature because it is taking care of the environment. All right. Again, no ideal age for this type of enterprise, and the growth is completely linked to your ambition. Now, take for example Ola. Take for example Aether. These are electric vehicle companies. Ola, of course, was a ride-hailing company earlier. It still is, but it is diversifying itself into electric vehicles now. Now, this is because the founders are so ambitious in nature that even at a young age they have created multi-billion-dollar companies, and yet they're going ahead and solving the problem of preserving the environment and doing business in the social context, yet making money. All right. And the success is a factor of the field that you choose. It'll all depend upon how scalable your company and how scalable your idea could be. Next up is I talked about the corporate back enterprise. I'm actually talking of an intrapreneur. My previous example of my first venture was a classic case of an intrapreneur. Intra means inside. a corporate, and where I told you that my CEO saw an opportunity. The CEO saw the worth of the product, and he let go of a few funds, let go of a few fair bit of money for me to go ahead and tinker with the idea. And it was a fantastic experience in terms of learning how to go about working on a product and going out and selling it. So it was all under the umbrella of an already established entity. So another example is Ola Electric. Ola Electric is again the brainchild of Bhavesh Agarwal, who is again the co-founder of Ola, and this is again being under the umbrella of Ola. So the corporate pact is something for those who have uh, uh, joined a corporate, who think that they are not meant for being an entrepreneur. Let me again stress the fact that it doesn't matter whether you have the mindset of being an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter that you're born in the family of entrepreneurs or business people. If you have an idea and if you feel and if you believe in it, go ahead and try it, despite the fact that you have uh, got yourself employed with an entrepreneur or employed in a corporate company. And fifth is the fact I talked about the lifestyle-led business. It is again characterized by being bootstrapped. The word bootstrap means it is self-funded. You don't have investors coming and saying that, hey, I want to invest in your venture, and I see value in your venture. And this is largely again characterized by founders who feel that maybe my passion for the lifestyle that I want to lead is something which I should be doing myself. So I know for a fact that the paragliding school in Beer Billing in Himachal, I don't know if any one of you have been there, any one of you have tried paragliding there. But the founders were very fond of nature. They were very fond of mountains, and they want to be in that environment. And that led them to, found this kind of adventure where they offer these kind of adventure sport facility for people coming from as far as Delhi or Bombay, and they want to do paragliding in a safe environment. And that is what they're doing. All right. The other example could be a homestay. So you have a beautiful home in a nice town where tourism is high, so you can convert it into a nice homestay. I know for a fact at least two people, one in Goa, who has converted his villa into a homestay. It is there on Airbnb. You can go ahead and book it. Another example is in Coorg. This guy is a coffee planter. He also grows pepper, black pepper. He also grows cardamom, and he has a nice farmhouse, and he has converted that into a homestay. The next example is Ronnie and Barty. I don't know whether you have had the chance of looking at their videos. They have a YouTube channel. They are very passionate about travel, and that too in the Himalayas. So they have restricted themselves into a bracket where they are vloggers, not bloggers. So they share their vlogs on YouTube. They go around talking more about the different places that they have visited, the not so well-known places of Himalayas around Manali, Kulu, and you name the hot spots that you think about, but they have gone beyond those places. All right, they're really hard to reach. Their claim to fame is, of course, their dialogue delivery, the photography that they have. It is a treat to watch their 7 to 8 minute vlog. If you haven't, I would certainly encourage you to go out and try it. Ronnie and Barty, just put the names on YouTube and you will get many videos that they have shared. They have even invested in a very high-end kind of a drone camera, which captures them traveling in a car from hundreds or 200 feet above. It's beautiful. All right. So it all is dependent upon what your lifestyle choice is and how you want to drive that. Again, ideal for those who are in their 20s, 30s. You have got a flavor of the corporate. You have seen yourself grow from let's say a management trainee to an assistant manager to an associate director, and you feel that this is not for me, I want to be in the lap of nature, I want to be doing something different, this is something for you. So you want to follow your passion, so this is something for you. And of course, you have a very healthy work-life balance over here. All right, and last but not the least, by acquisition. So something which Swiggy thinks, and look at this particular icon over here. So these three different jigsaw parts that you see is Swiggy, and this last part that is being fitted over here is Dunzo. So Swiggy has something of its own. Dunzo has something which is complementing Swiggy, and they go about getting together for that particular objective. Think about Byju's. Byju's has also got an online education platform, but White Hat Junior comes in and plugs in the coding play for Byju's. So Byju's acquires White Hat Junior. So that is something which you can also think about once you've grown big enough, or you think that a big enough company has this, but it doesn't have this, so let me solve this problem. Okay, now it is again very similar to an intrapreneur that I talked about, but you have to think about any of the thing or any of the gap that a Swiggy is not able to fulfill, you go ahead and fulfill yourself, right? All right, like I promised at the beginning itself that I would also talk about the soft skills of an entrepreneur. I cannot stress more about curiosity. That is something which is at the core of being an entrepreneur. And it doesn't stop at being an entrepreneur. So even if you were to go ahead and work as a corporate employee, be as curious as possible so that you get to know the basics of the business, you get to know uh, the insights of the business, because I was curious to know more about facility management. So I sat with the head of facilities management and I talked more about it, and I got to know and I was curious about the pain points. And when I found one pain point, which was mirroring in mine as well, and that gave birth to this idea. So the curiosity is something which will carry you forward even when you are 60, even when you're 65. Get to know more about different kinds of things, because you never know which bulb will come up at what time. So read more, read as many kinds of books as you can, regardless of their genre, regardless of the thickness. So the more you read, the more you get to know from somebody else's wisdom. All right, and be adaptable. Just yesterday, I don't know whether you follow Diljit Dosanjh. He's a Punjabi singer, and he just shared a reel which said that दूध फटने का गम सिर्फ उसको होता है जिसको पनीर बनाना नहीं आता. Right? Now, if you're not adaptable, you would miss a lot of opportunities which could come your way, and will enable you to think in a different way. Now, if obstacles are coming in your way, be happy that there are obstacles, because you are on a way. All right, and sometimes these obstacles are the path that you have to take. Right. So be adaptable in your nature so that you're able to negotiate different turns, different twists that come your way, and think of different ideas that you can, think about when you're moving in your entrepreneurial journey. Team building, can't stress much more on this, because you can't work alone. You have to have different people working with you. Negotiation, that's something which I would love to talk about. I can spend another 90 minutes on negotiations, how to negotiate. That's a topic very close to my heart, because being an entrepreneur, you have to be sitting across the table with the decision makers. They throw a lot of different kinds of questions in front of you, sometimes very uncomfortable ones, sometimes which you're not able to answer. Sometimes they are googly in nature. So you have to be prepared for each and every single situation, and that's something which is going to come to you as you grow into your avatar as an entrepreneur. Be comfortable with failures. I've already talked about that. Risk tolerance, I already talked about that. Selling. Now, this is something I'll talk about selling a little later, but let me talk about decisiveness and persistence. Decisiveness is the bedrock of taking decisions, of being an entrepreneur, and persistence is something which you have to take care of or translate into the runway. Now, At the base of it, persistence sounds very nice. It's good to be persistent. But if your runway is, let's say, X kilometers, and if your plane requires 2X, then I'm sorry to say that persistence and every other theory that I'm talking of goes for a toss. All right. Coming back to selling, and I want to dovetail selling with the fact that if you can create something new, so all these nine things or eight things apart, I personally would say that if you have two very strong things with you, one is if you have a product, if you are able to create a product, if you are able to create a service, and if you're able to sell it, then there is nothing stopping you. Then you become unstoppable. These two things, every other thing that you see in front of you will come naturally to you later on. If not, then you work upon it. But these two things, if you have, then there is something going on for you. I would recommend watching this series, TVF Pictures. Uh, do watch this. The episode one is Tu Beer Hai. I don't know how many of you have watched this. I don't know how many people have heard of this TVF Pictures. Do go ahead. It is the journey of 4 to 5 people who have an idea. It gives a very humorous twist of how the journey of an entrepreneur begins and how they succeed in life. It's a very fun, but a very real take on entrepreneurship. I would like to pause over here and see if you have any questions, guys.
I would now request all the listeners to kindly raise hands or write their questions in the chat box if they have any. It's a humble request. Kindly raise hands or write in the chat box if you want to raise your question. Sir, we have some questions lined up. So may I please put forward few of them?
Yes, please.
What challenges did you have to overcome at the beginning of your journey?
All right. So there are two journeys, and I can talk about both. The first and the first challenge that any entrepreneur has is, of course, you have to define your runway. And I've talked about the runway in various multiple ways. The runway is nothing but how much money do you have in your bank that can sustain you, because being an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you have an idea, you create the product, you create the service, and people start buying from you from the very first day itself. All right. In my second journey, when I can talk about, it's been a year that the cash register hasn't rung. So for that 1 year, you have to have that kind of a backing of funds in your bank, which can take care of your EMIs, the normal expenses, your day-to-day expenses. So that's something which you have to really think about. That's from the personal front. The second challenge is, of course, if you're able to punt, and I use the word punt with the fact that you have to be very confident of the fact that this particular product or the solution that you have in mind, or which you have to play with, will be bought or will be consumed by the people that you're selling to. Now, the very first venture that I had, nobody had an idea of what kind of a solution can exist. In fact, they didn't even have any idea of the problem itself. All right. So first of all, you have to educate the people about the problem and then the solution. Now that was, I think, the biggest challenge that I faced in the very first venture, which was a real estate venture, where I had to go ahead and tell people that this is an IoT kind of a solution, which is backed by RFID hardware, and this will solve this particular problem. This will save you this much amount of money, which you can use for this particular purpose. So they used to appreciate all of that, but they didn't find the problem painful enough to be solved. All right. But in the second venture that I have, the problem is big, the problem is painful, the solution is expensive, but the one that we are proposing is a very elegant one and is not very expensive as compared to the one that they traditionally have been used to. So the challenge right now is to go out and to sell to as many as people as possible so that they're able to consume this product. So number one challenge is, of course, what your personal runway is. And number two is your belief in the fact that you will be able to sell this product. Once you have that sorted out, then you can focus on the next step of your business, which is to scale it up. I hope that answers your question.
Well said, sir. Rightly said. So the next question we have is, we have Prashant with us, and he's asking if we have a great idea and we want to do a startup, but as well as we need some investors. So what are the best ways to explain our ideas to the investor, and how can we convert the idea? Please guide us.
Okay, fantastic question, Prashant. So if you have an idea and if you have a viable product, then we can talk. But to begin talks with an investor, you have to reach a phrase called MVP, minimum viable product. All right, that minimum viable product is nothing but the product in its rough shape. All right, that rough shape is nothing but it should be workable, it should be demonstratable, so that the person who is looking at it can get a fair sense of what you're talking about. The user or the investor will know what kind of a problem it will solve. So if we have reached till that stage, the next stage is, of course, to do it on your own, if possible, go out and sell it. If you haven't reached that stage, there are enough ways to figure out what exactly the product is, whether it is at design stage, whether it is at idea stage, whether you need a certain amount of backing as far as coders are concerned, or people who can go ahead and manufacture it for you, or you can structure the whole service offering by yourself. So that needs to be first of all evaluated where in the journey of entrepreneurship you are in, or where in the journey of the product development you are in. So the product or the service and how matured it is in its form, in its avatar, will define your next step. Prashant, I don't know whether that answers your question.
Very well said, sir. I hope he must have received the answer. So we have the next question, which says, how do I determine whether I'm capable of starting a business? Where to spot ideas?
Okay, where to spot ideas is all here. You have to be very open to different kinds of stimuli that is coming into you. Like I said, read a lot. I cannot stress more on the fact that the more you read, the more nuanced your thinking becomes. Twitter is something which I would strongly recommend. I would obviously not recommend Facebook or Instagram because that's something for entertainment, but Twitter is something which I go to for a lot of different kinds of ideas, because you're able to gain perspective from a lot of wise people that are there, and it all is dependent upon who you follow, so that your feed on Twitter becomes much more richer. So that is one way of looking at different ways of thinking. All right. So if you ask me, Pragati, how to think is also another module that you could probably have a 90-minute conversation on. But the first part of the question is, and I've answered the second part of the question, is that the first part of the question is whether I am an entrepreneur or not. So that is something, I don't know who has asked this, but a good question. You have to be there to do it, to figure out whether you're an entrepreneur or not. All right. Now, I started off from a very middle class background. My father was in the government services. I did my MBA like any other person who was in my batch, went on to do my corporate stint for 10, 15 years. That was the time when you feel that you owe it to yourself that you have to do something for yourself. You have to do, and you have to try out an idea. And if you strongly believe in that idea that, hey, this is something which can work, then you owe it to yourself. And I go back to myself that I said at the back when one of the slides, that when you are 70 and you look back, you should not have any regrets. Like, again, the pain of regret is far more than the pain of failure. So if you have that question that whether I'm an entrepreneur or not, why don't you go and try it? What is the max that can happen is that you will fail. You'll lose a few years, or you'll lose a few bit of rupees. It'll all come back. It's a long race. So you owe it to yourself. Go ahead and try it, please.
Well said, sir. Perfectly explained. Thank you so much, sir. And one last question we have is, what kind of person makes a successful entrepreneur?
Again, there is no one particular one size fits all. All these 2 3 different examples that I showed you, Sachin Bansal, Binny Bansal, Tarun Mehta, Vijay Shekhar Sharma of Paytm, Ather, Flipkart. You think of people like Steve Jobs, you think of people like Bill Gates, you think of people like Mark Zuckerberg. These are the classic glamorous examples of entrepreneurs. What makes an entrepreneur is the very simple fact that they earn money. All right. Even if you are able to earn, let's say, a crore, 2 crore, 3 crores out of your venture, is good enough. I mean, if you're able to sustain yourself financially, and if you're financially independent, and if you're able to guide few people, if you're able to employ few people, you are successful enough. All right. You don't have to be a $1 billion unicorn. You don't have to be attracting investors. So long as you are happy doing what you love doing, so long as you're making money, so long as your cash flow positive, you're an entrepreneur.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom with us. You have thrown enough light on the point that one who possesses the spark and will to take risks, go through sleepless nights, will definitely lead successful future and luxurious life ahead. It was really enlightening to hear from such a talented and experienced professional nomad who made us learn today that failure is far better than regretting of not trying something. So thank you so much to open us up on to think, plan, face, and learn. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Pragati. Thank you, Dr. Shizel. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you so
Loved
much.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.